Welcome back. Now, the current political gridlock pitting the executive and the legislature over the anti-gay bill is symbolic of President Museveni's dexterity towards complex issues. During a carefully choreographed ceremony, the president, in February this year, assented to the anti-homosexuality law amidst resistance from the West. The president has since then changed his tone barely after the Constitutional Court struck down the law over a technicality regarding quorum in the House. He recently asked Parliament to go slow on the bill. So is the president a flip-flopper, or did he in the first place sign the law to gain traction with sentiments amongst the public? To discuss this further and Talk of the Nation is Law Don Dr. Businje Kabumba. Welcome to Talk of the Nation.
Thank you very much.
Once again, we're discussing the anti-homosexuality law now bill. And we're looking at the politics of it tonight. The judgment of the Constitutional Court on the anti-gay law happened to fall at the same time that the president left for the US-Africa summit talks. And I will come out and just ask the question that is probably on very many people's minds. Could this have been a well-orchestrated plan to get the monkey off the president's chest before he could meet his host?
Well, there are some very strong indications that this might be the case, in the sense of the pulling forward of the case. It had been scheduled for sometime in September. It was brought forward in August. And the strange priority that has been given this particular petition over a number of other petitions filed around the same time, some even earlier, dealing with equally important issues such as public order management. If you're talking about morality, and that some morality has become now crashing, there's also the petition against the Anti-Pornography Act. And so there are certain indications that might suggest that there has been a choice or a prioritization of this case over others, and which then might call into question the possibility then that, you know, the court perhaps assisted the executive in this sense.
Now, the president's dramatic U-turn after his public tirade towards the West portrays him as a bit of a canny political operator. How long do you think he can keep this up?
I think our president is in a very difficult position. He's ranged against a very strong, I won't say international, because this is really, even the United Nations, not really settled. There's strong debate that pits Islamic states and African states against Western states. But he's pitted against a very strong force in the West that would like to see a more progressive stance regarding gay rights in not just Uganda but all over the world, versus a very strong domestic opposition. There seems to be a sort of a guttural reaction against the notion of gay rights in whatever form. So obviously he has to tread a fine line. The Constitution places him in charge of foreign policy, the executive, and really places him, gives the mandate to determine our foreign policy, although Objective 28 talks about respect for international law. But really, the president is given wide difference, wide range to determine where Uganda goes. Of course, Parliament is given the mandate to ratify. But that said, at the same time, he has to win elections. And domestic elections depend on what the people want. So he's really caught between a rock and a hard place. And it might just go beyond political survival. It really goes to realpolitik, in the sense that the president is first and foremost a political animal who must survive if he's to push his agenda forward. And I think those are the calculations that he must necessarily put into view.
You actually almost want to sympathize with the situation in which the president finds himself at this point in time.
Precisely, because I think any one of us who, if faced in that position, where you have very strong people who can make your life very difficult, not just your life, but your country's life.
That's true.
We saw it, I think every Ugandan now is feeling the effect of the passage of that law, in the sense of aid that was cut, which has been passed on to the consumer in terms of mobile money taxation of banking services. Every single Ugandan is now feeling the cost of that in a certain way. But at the same time, I think also the president must respond to domestic pressure and the domestic sentiment that seems to say this is un-African, this is un-Ugandan, if you like. And so, yes, I think there's some sympathy in the sense of the difficult position he finds himself in. He's damned if he does, and damned if he doesn't.
If he doesn't. Yeah. Now, once again, we see the executive, which is largely the president, and parliament clash, I mean, for obvious reasons. The president, on one hand, is against the reintroduction of the bill, and the speaker of parliament, a strong advocate to retable this very bill. Do MPs have the gravitas to return this bill at a time when reports emerge that they were given cash handouts to settle their astronomical debts?
Well, of course, the challenge is that the MPs are also themselves political animals, and they must respond to voters. And at the end of the day, I think they might still get the money, those who are given to that, but at the same time still go with the very strong public sentiment that is for the introduction of the bill. That said, I think the court lost an opportunity to act as the saving grace in this whole matter. I think they are presented with a golden opportunity to guide the country about what the position is, constitutionally speaking, about this bill, just like they did in relation to the Chief Justice. You know, tell us what the law says, guide us, you know, that's your mandate, to interpret the Constitution. What they did, I think, was a cop-out, to say, well, we find that there was no quorum, and on this basis alone, they said, you know, then it's academic to go into it. But now it turns out that their, I think, abdication, really, of their constitutional duty has now led us into back where we started. Because, and that's why I disagree with those who say, you know, the Constitutional Court has given some finality on this matter. I think, yes, the petition was won, and yes, in a sense, the executive obtained some reprieve, but in a sense, it was a postponement of problems, which problems have again come.
So the court failed us.
I think the court failed us.
You guys failed us.
Well, the court, those guys failed Ugandans, I think. I think they're avoiding the mess. And it is a mess. How do you determine on the one hand the rights of individuals, on the other hand the sentiment of the public? But I think that's a mess. That's the difficult job that they were given by the Constitution under 137. And I think by not doing that, I think they have failed themselves, they have failed us. And I think it's the root cause of the challenge now we see between the executive and the parliament. I think it must go back to the court next time to face issues squarely. Give us an answer. That's why you're there. Give us an answer. Tell us what the law says. The answer will not satisfy everyone. A certain party or parties will remain necessarily satisfied.
That's true.
But give us an answer.
Let's just think ahead to 2016. Yeah. To what extent is the anti-gay bill likely to influence the outcome of the 2016 elections, if at all?
Ugandans are very fickle people. I'd even say voters in general. We move from headline to headline. We respond to crisis, you know. So personally, I won't say that the anti-gay bill by itself would be determinative. It could be that there's a crisis by that time. Or so there's what I see as a short-term sort of a certain short-termism, if I may call it that, that affects us as a population. We live, I think, from headline, scandal to scandal. No one will tell you what happened last month, for instance. What was told, I think, will become numb.
Because it's been overtaken by other events.
And perhaps it goes down to the, I think, in a sense, the Hobbesian nature of our lives that are now short, nasty, and brutish. You find, you know, it's sort of day-to-day living. So in a sense, right now, the sentiments are, you know, rife. By the end of the day, at that particular time, given the economic situation, who has more money, who beats more people, who intimidates them more, at the end of the day might, you know, carry the day over and above this particular issue. Okay,
just to wrap this up, the president's change of heart perhaps has endeared him to the West again. And I say perhaps has endeared him to the West again. Is this not likely to compromise the West's attitude towards the quality of democracy and the rule of law?
And that's really the challenge. I think the answer is yes. If that's the case, and the answer is yes. Well, it goes back to the question of unprincipled politics and unprincipled advocacy. That why, and I think this is where a number of Ugandans have problems with the way the campaigning around this particular bill has been. The voicing of very strong concern about the rights of gays in Uganda, which is, of course, a real issue. But at the same time, I think there's a question of hypocrisy to say that, well, when people are being beaten here on the streets of Kampala, we don't hear the same voices. And so I think there's a real concern about that. But alongside that one, I think there should be a move by political actors who are for the bill, I think, to domesticate their struggle. Okay. I think they must locate their struggle with Uganda and struggle domestically for that, because it's more sustainable, as opposed to a short-term solution that gets you there, and then that's not sustainable going forward.
Thank you for joining us on Talk of the Nation. We certainly will be keeping our eye on this bill and just seeing how it evolves ahead of 2016. Thank you for joining us on Talk of the Nation tonight.
Thank you.
That was Constitutional Law Don, Dr. Businje Kabumba, joining us on Talk of the Nation. We will take another short break and I'll be right back with the latest in NTV Weekend Sport.